Now to international affairs and a sharp escalation of the war in the Middle East. Israel tried to kill senior members of Hamas and Qatar in an airstrike we were reporting as breaking news this time yesterday. The strike threatens to undermine negotiations over the Gaza war. Let's get some insight by turning, as we often do, to Negah Angha, a former senior advisor at the U.S. Department of State and White House National Security Council under President Biden. Thanks for being with us.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Good morning. Good morning. Hamas said the Israeli strike failed to kill senior officials. What was the immediate political fallout of the attack?
Right. I mean, look, I think as you provided the context, I mean, Israel presented the strike as an effort to weaken Hamas's leadership. And the timing was remarkable because Hamas officials were in Qatar discussing the U.S.-backed ceasefire proposal. So obviously, rather than advancing security, it completely undercut diplomacy at quite a critical moment. And it was incredibly striking that it took place on Qatari soil, who is a close partner. It hosts the largest American base in the Middle East, and truly an extraordinary gamble by the Israelis. But I think Israel may have calculated this based on recent acts that it's taken, and it essentially either had U.S. backing or essentially tolerance in the strikes it took in Iran, in Syria, in Yemen, and in Lebanon, and none of which really faced any serious consequences. And I think that's emboldened Prime Minister Netanyahu to believe that he can take this risk again. And obviously the danger is the precedent it will set, because if Israel can bomb a place like Doha with very little pushback, it signals that no regional partner is off limits for Israel right now.
The attack risks antagonizing the Qatari government, which so far has played a diplomatic role in the war on Gaza. Do you think yesterday's attack will cause that to change?
Look, I think the fallout is quite significant in the region. You see that UAE and Saudi Arabia, both being U.S. partners and both in talks around the normalization with Israel, publicly condemning the strike. And this forces Gulf states to question the value of an American security umbrella if U.S. allies can be hit while hosting a U.S. base and talks around a U.S. ceasefire deal. And it's a concern because at this point in time, the message across the region is that Israel is acting without a restraint, and Washington either can't or won't rein it in. And that erodes confidence in U.S. diplomacy at a moment when Washington is really trying to build a regional coalition, and President Trump wanting to be seen as a peacemaker president. So I think Doha has expressed some constraints, but the region is really seized by this.
President Trump has given conflicting statements on the strike. Where does the White House stand in all this?
We're going to have to see. I think, just purely from reporting, it was clear that the U.S. and was essentially caught off guard. I mean, American officials were tracking the Israeli jets, but only got word after the missiles were already in the air. And obviously, yesterday's scramble, be it from President Trump calling Prime Minister Netanyahu, or his special envoy Steve Witkoff calling the Qataris, promising that this wouldn't happen again. But it really shows Washington's inability or unwillingness to really set limits on Israel. And for the risk for President Trump is looking boxed in, unable to protect U.S. allies, unable to enforce discipline on a partner that really relies so heavily on American support. And that weakens the U.S. credibility, obviously not just in the Gulf, but across the region and globally. So I think over the next few days, we're going to have to pay attention to the messages that not only President Trump puts out, or his White House press secretary will put out in the upcoming press brief.
All right. Negah Angha, I appreciate your time, a former senior advisor at the U.S. Department of State. Thank you again.
Thank you.